What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Monday, everybody. Before I continue, I just want to let you know that if you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to please like, share, hype, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, really, but it is what helps us the most. However, if you want to help out the channel in other ways, we have links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube or on Patreon. If you want merch and no ads, I think Patreon is the way. This is the only ad you get on Patreon. You can also choose to give us a review on Spotify because we're just accepted to the partner program and we can really use your help to keep growing. You can also go to the main channel if you're new, and I got about 850 episodes that you can go through. I would really appreciate doing any of those things. Whatever you choose to do is always appreciated. So thank you. Okay, so we have to talk about this because it just came out today. And as you guys know, I really, really don't appreciate people who have been milking the Three Eye Atlas story to their benefit and using information that is not reliable. And there's been a lot of misinterpretation and flat out just invention of things, make shit up, of people who want to say that this is like an intergalactic army that is coming back to us to enslave us, that the Galactic Federation is part of this, that reptilians are like in this massive ship of whatever this is, and they want to invade us. Like, people make the wildest shit up. And there's a lot of people who eat that shit up quite easily. And I always have a problem with that. But when you have actual verifiable evidence of weird stuff going on around Three Eye Atlas, I think that's when you do have to look at it and you do have to report on it, which is what I'm doing today. And I've been critical of Abby Loeb in the past because of like the proclivity to try and war game scenarios that haven't happened yet or that are not even like in the vicinity of yet. I think that we need to go step by step. And these guys that I'm about to introduce to you, they just did an article on a Substack called the Sentinel Briefing. And it has a timeline of when one of the satellites that is like about $400 million called TESS went dark for about 72 hours at the exact moment when 3 Atlas was going to be visible, and the level of detail was going to be very, very specific on many things that they could study. And these guys just came out with an article where it pretty much confirms that people are acknowledging that this satellite went dark at a very specific moment that could have told us a lot of what this thing is, and it just went dark for 72 hours again. So there's an admission that is recent from January 29th of people from NASA admitting that there was a blackout and a contingency of this satellite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the article to you guys because we need to talk about it. So here it is. From the Sentinel Briefing, please subscribe to the Sentinel Briefing. I think this is important, and I think everybody needs to read this. It says, confirmed, NASA admits the test contingency. How a 337 million satellite went dark at the exact moment it could have proven 3i Atlas is not a comet, and why NASA, the CIA, and the academic establishment are all running the same playbook. That's quite a subtitle. The confession. Date February 16, 2026. Subject forensic analysis of sector 1751. Confirmed. Date February 15, 2026. Subject forensic analysis sector 1751. And they leave an archive article that I'm going to leave in the description. Cross-reference the Sentinel dossier, the Glomar confirmation, SITREP, the Pacific diversion, the 3 days of darkness, the search, and the Sentinel edit. Clearance public. The confession. On February 12th, NASA's TESS Science Support Center quietly released the paper No press conference, no media advisory, just a technical document slipped onto the archive preprint server, authored by Jorge Martinez Palomera, Amy Tucson, and the Test Science Support Center. They called it a high level science product. Buried on page one, a single sentence confirmed what Sentinel reported 13 days earlier during the most critical observation window for Interstellar Object 3I Atlas. Their flagship 337 million space telescope went dark. Their word for it was contingency mode. In the 3 days of darkness, we called it a containment protocol. In the search, we identified the motive. Today, they officially confirmed both. They just didn't realize they were confessing. Then we go to what is actually flying through our solar system. Before we dissect the blackout, the data laundering, and the institutional cover up, you need to understand what's at stake. Because the question NASA doesn't want you asking isn't whether tests went offline, it's what tests would have seen if it hadn't. On December 18, 2025, we published the Sentinel dossier, a comprehensive threat assessment identifying 18 distinct anomalies associated with 3I Atlas, not curiosities, not interesting features, 18 independent data points that, viewed in aggregate, form a statistically impossible cluster around a single conclusion. This object is not a comet. Consider the operational profile. 3I Atlas entered our solar system aligned within 5.0 of the ecliptic plane, the narrow disk where all our planets orbit. The probability of a random interstellar object threading this geometry of 0.2%, but that alignment wasn't just lucky, it was tactically efficient. It enabled what we identified as grand tour trajectory, sweeping past Mars and Venus while threading Earth's observational corridor at 1.8 AU. The cumulative probability of achieving these planetary encounters by chance is 0.00005%. It is accelerating under its own power. The orbital solution shows non-gravitational acceleration that, under the standard cometary model, would require the object to eject at 10 to 20% of its total mass. No commensurate debris field has been observed. Dr. Avi Loeb and the Galileo Project have demonstrated that this acceleration follows a smooth inverse square relationship between distance from the sun, precisely what you'd expect from solar radiation pressure acting on a thin artificial structure, a like sail. It turned blue near the sun, a chromatic shift consistent within plasma drive emissions or ionization from an internal energy source hotter than the star itself. And it is headed for Jupiter, not past Jupiter, to Jupiter. The object will arrive on March 16 at a distance of 53.5 million kilometers, a figure that matches Jupiter's Hill sphere radius. The gravitational boundary between orbital insertion requires minimal fuel, with a margin of error of 0.06 million kilometers. As we wrote in December, if it maneuvers like a ship, targets planets like a ship, is made of industrial alloys like a ship, transmits radio signals like a ship, then it is a ship. The combined probability of these 18 anomalies converging on a single natural object by chance is less than 1 in a billion. This is what TESS was supposed to be watching. And this is a really cool graphic of the contingency mode activating and the system failure of TESS that happened between January 15 and January 22nd. But it was completely offline for 72 hours, which was exactly during the critical observation gap. So the probability of coincidence of that happening is 1 in 250,000. So this is why this is important. What happened there? So this is the timeline of events. January 15, 2026 may be the most operationally significant date in the history of this investigation. 3 events converge on a single calendar square, and none of them have been adequately explained. Event 1, test goes offline. 2 days earlier, on January 13th, Avi Loeb and Mauro Barbieri published a paper on Archive predicting that Three-Eye Atlas would reach peak opposition on January 22nd at a phase angle of 0.690. Opposition is the alignment where Earth sits directly between the Sun and the target, the geometry that maximizes backscattered light and reveals surface properties. For a quote unquote comet, this should be unremarkable. For a solid reflective object, a hole, a sail, a structured surface, opposition produces a diagnostic brightness spike called an opposition surge. This was the window. This was the test. On January 15th, the moment Three Eye Atlas entered opposition geometry, test dropped into what NASA now calls contingency mode. It stayed dark for 72 hours. Event 2, Crew 11, emergency evacuation. On that same day, January 15th, SpaceX Crew 11 executed an emergency return from the International Space Station, splashing down off California coast at 0341 local time. As we documented in SITREP, the Pacific Diversion, the operational footprint at this evacuation contradicts the official medical issue narrative at every level. The capsule used a rare Pacific trajectory instead of the standard Atlantic recovery zone. All 4 crew members were transported to a medical facility in San Diego, not Houston, and held together for observation, quote unquote. NASA cited the fastest return window as justification, confirming extreme urgency. The ISS was left with a skeleton crew of 3. We wrote, the decision to treat a healthy crew as patients rather than passengers is a telltale sign of containment. Containment of what? The timing is the data. Tess goes blind and the station evacuates on the same day. The probability of these events co-occurring by chance is a question we leave to our readers. Event 3, the opposition window opens. As Tess sat in darkness and the ISS crew was being contained in San Diego, Three-Eye Atlas began its transit through the most revealing observational geometry of its entire solar system passage. The window was open, the instruments were off, the witnesses were removed. So this is the cover-up 5 layers deep. On January 6th, Layer 1, classification, Glomar response. December 18, Layer 2, force deployment, Project Square. Layer 3, it's the observatory blackout, test contingency. And on February 14, which is, I think, one of the most significant, was the edits or database manipulation. And then on the same day, there was the peer review rejection of a paper that Dr. Loeb attempted to get peer reviewed, and he was denied. So this is really strange, guys. I don't know what you think about it. Let's read this, the cover up, 5 layers deep. What elevates this from institutional negligence to systematic suppression is the pattern. We're not dealing with one bureaucratic failure. We have documented 5 independent layers of information management, each targeting the same anomaly from a different angle. Taken individually, each might be explained. Taken together, they describe a coordinated protocol. Layer 1, classification, the Glomar confirmation, January 6th. On January 6th, we reported that the CIA had issued a Glomar response to a FOIA request about Three-Eye Atlas. Under FOIA law, an agency can only invoke Glomar if the mere act of admitting the file exists would compromise national security or reveal intelligence sources and methods. If you ask the CIA for the files of Halley's Comet, they tell you they have no records. Comets are not intelligence targets. But the CIA placed Three-Eye Atlas in the same legal category as foreign weapons systems and covert operations, as we wrote. NASA says Three-Eye Atlas is a rock. The CIA says it is a matter of national security. Both cannot be true. The Glomar response implies that National Technical Means, classified reconnaissance satellites, were tasked to image this object. They aren't hiding the object, they're hiding the resolution of the object. Layer 2, force deployment, launch anomaly, Project Square, December 18th. On December 18th, the US Space Force launched the STP S-30 mission, codenamed Don't Be Such a Square. 5 months ahead of its original April 2026 schedule, the acceleration was announced just 48 hours before launch. The payload, a cluster of sensor platforms, deployed into orbit 24 hours before 3i Atlas made its closest approach to Earth. We wrote, why does the US Space Force accelerate the test mission by 5 months? Because April 2026 is too late. The object would be near Jupiter by then. This wasn't a test, it was a scramble. Layer 3, observatory blackout. The 3 days of darkness, January 30th. Test goes dark for 72 hours during the opposition approach window. No public announcement, no press release about the contingency event. The admission was buried in a technical paper on archive 13 days after we reported it. This is the big news. When the data is finally released, it arrives processed through iterative background subtraction, and packaged as high-level sentient science product rather than raw observations. Our independent verification confirms the raw data is publicly accessible and macro level consistent with the processed output. The question that remains, and that phase 2 of project Archimedes is designed to answer, is whether the processing methodology removed sub-percent anomalous signals in the opposition peak window. Layer 4, the database manipulation, silent edit, February 14th. This was 2 days ago, by the way. After Avi Loeb and Richard Cloet identified two potentially interstellar meteors in NASA's CNEOS Fireball database, the database was silently edited within 24 hours. A single velocity vector sign was flipped. A tiny mathematical change was that forced the meteor's calculated origin back inside the solar system. No correction notice, no announcement. The edit was discovered only because Loeb had archived the original data through the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. As we wrote, a silent retroactive edit made only after a challenging paper is published is not science. It's a cover-up. Layer 5, journal gatekeeping, the silent edit. Simultaneously, a prestigious astrophysics journal refused to send Loeb's papers on 3i Atlas anomalies to peer review, claiming they would be of limited interest to the astrophysics research community. The editor used identical template language to reject two previous 3i Atlas papers, both of which were later published in monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society and generated widespread scientific discussion. We wrote, when a single individual can unilaterally decide the analysis of a potential interstellar probe is of limited interest, they are not acting as an editor, they are acting as a filter for acceptable reality. And this one goes on quite a bit more. They talk about all of these projects, but you guys can get the gist of it. So they're saying basically that 29 days from now, this object is gonna directly intercept Jupiter. That's what their data is saying. And they said it before in a previous article called the Sentinel Dossier, where they say that if the Hill sphere intercept at 53.5 million kilometers represents an orbital insertion point, then we are less than a month from the moment this object reaches its apparent destination, the moment it does whatever it came here to do, which is weird and a little scary. I'm not going to lie. And it also coincides weirdly, and this is just something that I spotted here, and somebody tweeted at me as well, that this kind of coincides with Easter too, which coincides with whatever Chris Bledsoe is talking about. And I'm the first, one of the first Bledsoe critics, especially because of some of the stuff that they've been doing so matter of factly, which I don't agree with. And it gets a little bit culty. And you guys know, but this is weird because the CIA classified it, the Space Force scrambled sensors for it, NASA blinded their telescope during its most revealing window. The databases are being scrubbed, the journals are being gated, the data is being laundered. And in 29 days, this thing, whatever it is, it just intercepts Jupiter. It arrives at Jupiter, according to these guys. So, what the hell is going on? This is really wild. I don't know if you guys agree with how fucking bananas this is, but I wanted to read some of it to you guys. I'm gonna leave it in the description so you guys can check the whole thing out alongside the archive article where they do confirm that this blackout actually happened from people at NASA and they buried it. So this is really wild. And I know that the angry astronaut, I'm not gonna leave out his name into all of this because I know that he's been looking at data related to this and he's been blowing the whistle for a while now. So I just wanted for some verification on this, which is this archive article, that there was a blackout at the most pivotal moment when this object was going to be viewed by Tess. So what the fuck is going on? And I don't know. Please tell me what you think about this. I'm going to leave it in the description. What do you think is happening? Why do you think this thing might just arrive at Jupiter? This is getting really freaky. I don't know if you guys agree, but there's a lot of data there. I'm going to leave it all there so you guys can check it out for yourselves. If I got something wrong or these guys got something wrong, let us know. We'll correct it. I always do. You know me. But I think this is really big. So let me know what you think. I'll be reading. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like the Sentinel Network. Always. Bye.